I would like to welcome everyone today to our webinar, Mason County Sheriff's Office Shares Its Success in Certification and Training Management. My name is Terry Thiele, and I am a customer advocate with Paladin Data Systems. Before we dive in to the webinar, let me start by describing the structure and ground rules for today's webinar. And I'd like to note up front that our goal is to have our time be as interactive as possible with you, our audience. We will plan for no more than 60 minutes today, and as questions are posed during the presentation, we will seek direct feedback and answers to those questions, if at all possible, as we go. Please note, you may submit questions by using the chat or questions function on the lower right corner of the GoToWebinar interface. Again, we'll incorporate questions from the audience as we go, but due to time constraints, if we are unable to answer all questions submitted today, we will follow up with answers after the webinar. Now, we're very pleased to have with us today Lieutenant Travis Adams, who for the last year has been a power user of ASMI, Paladin's decision support system for workforce readiness. Lieutenant Travis Adams, welcome and thank you for joining us today. It is a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks, Terry. Happy to be here.
Great. Hey, well, Travis, would you please just begin by providing us all and the audience with a bit about your background and your department?
Sure. I work for the Mason County Sheriff's Office here in Washington State. If you don't know where that's at, it's on the Olympic Peninsula. I've been with the department for about 20 years now. Our department has both patrol and corrections personnel. We have about 54 sworn. We have the corrections facility and then all our support staff as well. So we're a department of about 110 plus individuals.
Okay, that's great. Well, you've been with the agency for a number of years. Travis, how did your role change over time where you've now become your department's training guru?
So I started in patrol and was very interested in defensive tactics, became a master instructor through the state, and then I've been involved with just about every special unit in our department. So I've been involved with everything from the Marine unit to field training to SWAT and defensive tactics. And so I just have a extensive background in the training realm. In the last 4 years, as I moved into more of an admin role, my responsibilities here have been to one, maintain the accreditation process for our department. And two, I've worked extensively on integration of technology into the department that would help facilitate the organization and getting things done, making sure that we're keeping up with industry best standards.
That's great, Travis. Thanks. So, as a way to perhaps have you set the table for our listeners, will you please describe the background and environment that led to Mason County to look for a tool like ASMI?
Our department over the years has had really great instructors, and we've had really great training. Unfortunately, our training has been very, very siloed. They did their own type of training. They documented it in their own way. They kept the training documentation in their own locations, and the documentation was very, very fragmented. We recognized that as we moved into the new era of computers and the way things are running nowadays, that the way we were doing business was not working. All we used to have to worry about were lawsuits, and we would have plenty of time if there was a lawsuit to go dig up all the training paperwork. But now, in the days of public disclosure and other things, we recognize that we needed to be much more on top of our training and having that all in one centralized location. So it really kind of required us to refocus on what our training needs were, how we were documenting with their firearms, who hadn't, who needed to qualify with their taser, making sure we are meeting all those accreditation standards and the other things that are we all have to keep track of nowadays as cops.
Great, Travis, thank you. Well, for our audience, ASMI is a very powerful tool which can be used in many different ways. So for the sake of our webinar today, we're going to attempt to focus our time today around 4 general ideas or areas. Our first area of discussion has to do with the concept of training data silos versus team collaboration. And so Travis, I know you mentioned it a little bit, but again, what do those concepts mean to you?
Yeah, so I touched on the issue of the training silos, where we had great instructors and we had great training going on, but everybody was documenting training in their own way. They were housing the training documentation in different locations. Everything was either on paper or on spreadsheets and spread throughout the department. And we recognize that in this day and age with public disclosure and needing to keep on top of certifications for accreditation and all of those things, that we really needed to pull all of that information together so that we had a much better handle on it. Our department's growing. We have more requirements that are dropped on us all the time as far as training concerns, and so we really needed to do that. We started our training committee, I think I mentioned, and we really had to conceptualize how we were going to document training, what was important to us, how we were going to have that training structured, what requirements we were going to have for instructors, and kind of make that a much more cohesive system across the entire organization. So that was kind of the genesis, kind of what moved us in that direction. So as we looked around, being involved in training as many years as I have, as many different programs, I've looked at all different types of software out there, and everything from tracking training on Access to using spreadsheets, and we came across ASMI, and we really felt that it was going to fit the bill for us. So in our training committee, we worked on determining how we wanted training to look in the future, how that documentation should look, and how we could maximize ASMI and the tools it has in order to get where we needed to go with our training program.
Good. Well, Travis, will you introduce us to your kind of homepage, dashboard, and just kind of give us an overview of the ASMI landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we knew that we needed to do is get a much better handle on assessments, qualifications, who was assigned to what units, and how that all worked together. And one of the things that ASMI has done really well for us is given us a snapshot at any point in time of where people are at with those certifications. Part of that is everybody in our department has a login and access to ASMI, where they have their own homepage, their own dashboard. And it's a little different depending on what your qualifications are, what your routing authorities are, and we'll talk more about that. You should be able to see my homepage at this point. Is that true, Terry?
Yes, we see it. Thanks.
Great. So everybody in our department has a homepage, and up here at the top of the page, you'll see that my primary duty assignment is listed right up here at the top, and then all of our collateral duties are down below there. So if a deputy is an FTO and they're part of the SWAT team and they're a firearms instructor, those collateral duties would be listed down here. It's very nice for our command staff and other people who are running programs, because they can look up this information and know who belongs to what units, so that we know what our assets are at any time. Another thing that people have on their homepage are notifications, and we'll probably touch on that again a little bit later, but that tells people who have sign-off authorities that they have different things that they need to sign off, whether it's approving training when the training goes through routing, or whether it's approving a person being assigned to a detective unit or a special unit of some kind. In this block down here, this tells the user what their current certifications are, what for us assessments would be, firearms qualifications, and whether or not they're qualified at the time and when they need to redo their qualifications. If you have something that is lapsing or is going to come up on lapse time, it will be listed down here. Those are the primary things that most of the users in our department are looking at most of the time. If we have things in routing, it may not show up on this side, but it will let the user know that it's showing up awaiting a signature. And if they have certifications, they show up right up here. Another thing that we've done is we needed a location to put some of our department information. One of the things that we wanted to be able to house were annual evaluations because it's a requirement for accreditation. So we have part of ASMI partitioned off so that we can put their personnel evaluations in here. No one has access to them unless they get special permission to access those files. And that a file access request will show right down here. So if somebody needed to look at their file, that would show up in their dashboard. Another important part of the employee's dashboard is up here in the details section. And one thing I should note is that we're in our training instance right now, so I have a whole bunch of things built into the training instance so that I can play with them and see how they work and see what they look like, and it makes it so that I can be confident when I work on the production side that we're doing things the right way. Up here in the detail tab, this is where the officers will go to see their past training, if they have any tasks assigned to them, if they have any accreditations, what they are, their assessments for firearms or whatever you decide to set those assessments up as. And various other things are up here in the detail tab. So it's a good location for the personnel to go in and see what is going on, what's been documented, what hasn't, and keep up on all their qualifications.
Yeah, Travis, public records requests or public disclosure requests they're the ultimate challenge. You mentioned that earlier for any agency to kind of meet in any sort of timely fashion. Can we move into kind of the second area we were going to talk about? What did that mean for Mason County before using ASMI versus now that you have ASMI?
So I think most departments, I know especially in Washington State, are dealing with the public disclosure request issues. I don't know how it is around the country, but certainly here, lots of timelines that are requirements, information that they can request that we have to provide. With the training documentation that we had before, individual instructors, individual programs, different documentation, different formats, all kept in different locations, made it very, very difficult to view a comprehensive picture of someone's training plan or the training that they've had done or where the patrol unit was at as far as qualifications for firearms. Could we look and see if everybody was qualified in rifle and handgun and taser and the other issues that we had? Before public disclosure, the documentation that we were doing, I think it was adequate. We only really had to worry about a lawsuit, and if the lawsuit came, we would have weeks or months to get together the information that we needed, and we could kind of cobble that together. In today's day and age with public records requests that we have to fulfill all the time, we really needed a way that we could get in there and get that information fast, have a picture of what the department was doing at the time, what the status of our training was,
and to be able to do those things. So the issues around public disclosure really is another issue that drove us to look towards ASMI as a tool that we could use to get really quick snapshots of where individuals or the department as a whole were at, so that we could provide that information to the public when requested.
So
one of the other sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, if you had to estimate. Go ahead, Travis.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. A little delay there. One of the other issues that we had was, and it's part of a growing organization, is when you have training and that training has to go through a certain route to determine who's, to get that upper level review, it's very often that paperwork would go from the trainer to the person who documents the training to the program manager to the chief, and you never knew what the status of that training was, where it was at in that process, and training files would end up missing. They would not be in the personnel files where they needed to be, and it just kind of gets to be a mess when the organization gets bigger and you're trying to go through that review process. One of the things that's been really nice with ASMI is being able to have that training go through routing right in the system. So once it's documented, it's in the system where we can see it, but it also goes through a routing process where we route that training from one person to another so that we can ensure that everybody sees that. So go ahead, Terry. That was the other point I wanted to make.
Yeah, so Lord forbid there was a public records request for you. How easy is it to show your history of training?
So very easy to show our history of training. We can look up individual training in the individuals. We can also use our reporting. So I will show you a quick report. I'm going to have to switch over to our actual production side because that's where my best reports are at. Oops, that's the wrong one. So as I switch over here, it's important to know that the reporting is very robust. It pulls data from anywhere in the system that we need it to and puts it in basically any format that we want to have it in. So I have libraries set up. I have my libraries with reports that I use quite frequently. I also have a shared library which we can all use that looks like has 21 reports in it right now. They're just all configured differently depending on what data that we really want at the time and how we would want to pull that data out of the system. So for folks in Washington State, you know that we have to report our training hours to CJTC each year, document that we'd had 24 hours of training for our personnel. So one of the reports that I had done up was a report that shows training for the organization. So it's as simple as deciding what part of the organization I want to know for patrol, selecting a beginning date. So I want to select all of 2015 because that's the year that I'm reporting for. And once I finish selecting those dates, that is pretty much all I have to do. The report that I needed is generated and should pop up here with, what's that? I have no idea what this stuff is. All right, so hang on, I got to pull my report over. There we go. So it generates a report that shows in alphabetical order all the folks in patrol and what their training hours were within the time frame that it was that we put in. 12 pages of records where I can go through and just review where each person is at, how much training they've had, and I can provide that for documentation for the Criminal Justice Training Commission if I need to do that at that time. So reporting is really pretty much that simple. I will say that the reports are very robust. What you can pull out of the system is pretty much anything that you put in there. However, setting up the reports is kind of a complicated process. The nice thing is Paladin has some of the greatest support folks up there. Anytime I have needed a report done, I've just one little section added or something new put in there, or I realized that I needed a report that did something and I don't have that in there, they've created those reports when I've needed them in no time at all and provided those to me. So it's been a great experience working with that. Another type of report you can run is a report that's actually generated in the system here. It doesn't kick out as a PDF. So we document training and put the training in with, we have notes sections in our training, so a lot of times I want to know what's in the notes, so I will run a report that's looking for specific information. So I can run this report as it is right now, and it goes through all of patrol, gives me the individuals, what type of training it was, and provides me the notes section over here so that I can see if that's the training I was looking for, if I was doing a specific search or something along those lines. That's probably a good high-level overview of what the reports are and how they would work. It's probably a good time to segue into talking about the dashboard. You can set up a dashboard which will run reports that you use all the time so that you don't have to go in and look for them. Those reports just auto-generate whenever you open them up. So the information will be provided. So I have a couple reports in here that gives me everybody in the department. It's just a roster of everyone in the organization. I also have a report that runs for me that tells me where everybody's assigned, both their primary and their collateral duties, so I know who's assigned as an FTO or who's assigned to the SWAT team or who's assigned to the search and rescue unit, etc. It can also run reports that provide you information about training. So I have a report here that I ran that doesn't tell me who has done training, it actually tells me who hasn't done training. So for harassment training, every time I document that somebody has gone to harassment training, this report will have one less name on the list and will now tell me who still needs to have that training, and I can set that up however I need to. So the dashboard's a really valuable tool. You can add reports, take them away, you can resize them how you want to, and it works fantastic. If you don't want to log into ASMI, if you just want to have those reports sent to you, which I also do, you can schedule reports, and those reports will send you an email with an attachment with the report on the email attachment, and you can set that up however you want to. So you can see that I have two in here right now. They're scheduled to send to me on Monday mornings at one at 6 o'clock and one at 7 o'clock. And they provide me information on a couple different pieces of training that I care about at that particular time. And you can set those up to email to whoever you want at whatever time you want them to with whatever information you want in the report. It makes it very, very easy to keep track. If you want to know who is going to expire on their certifications or their firearms training in the next 3 months so that you can set that training up, you can have that report sent to you quarterly so that you can set up that report each quarter. So very powerful tool, being able to use the reports and set those up however you want to through ASMI.
Hey Travis, we have a few questions that have been submitted. I wanted to kind of bounce them off of you. First one is, it says, does the program keep copies of certificates in the training file? Can you speak towards that a little bit?
Yep, absolutely. So let me get out of our actual in here and show you. So we talked about reporting. Let's talk about, this is probably a good segue to talk about documenting training. Documenting training in ASMI is exceptionally simple. Like Terry said, it's a very robust system. It has lots and lots of attributes and things that it can do, so it takes some time to visualize and conceptualize how you want to set the system up. But if you put that work in on the front end, what you get on the back end is a system that's super easy to use and super easy to document training. So to answer that question specifically, absolutely you can. Kick me out there. If you want to document training, I'm going to say that I want to document that all of our, let's say, patrol division went to some particular training. So I'm going to select the patrol division, and those are all the individuals that I care about at the time. I can simply select all of them. If they didn't all attend, I could unselect a couple of them that didn't make it if I wanted to. And so now you'll see all those people that I selected are listed up here. I just need to determine what the training was. So I'm going to say that they all went to harassment training, just as an example. I select harassment training, which is in our training list. Put in how many hours it was, and hit save. I've now documented that all of those people went to harassment training on the date that was selected. And pretty much that's it. Everybody that is on this list now has in their training record the fact that they did harassment training with the information that we put in there. Now, if I want, I can individually select attachments for individuals, or if we have a training curriculum that we wanted to put in there, a lesson plan and a documentation of training, for example, we can simply attach that to everybody. So we could pretend like this was harassment training documentation here, lesson plan and documentation of training, and I would attach that. And now they also have those attached to all of their training files and would be ready to go. So yeah,
Travis, that could be an award file or any type of scan document, correct?
What's that?
That could be a scan of an award certificate or any other type of document, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Any type of certificate that they get from training, any type of documentation of training that you require. We require from all of our instructors that they provide a lesson plan and a documentation of training with the attendees and when they attended the training, those kind of things. And so when we do a bulk assignment of training like this, we include the lesson plan and that documentation of training for all the individuals at the same time. So yeah, absolutely. Whatever you decide is important for your department to add on there, you certainly can.
Great. What you just showed is a great segue to our third area, which is directly about officer assessments and officer training. Can you talk a little bit about how you use ASMI to streamline the assessment for, say, firearms training? Sure,
absolutely. So assessments are kind of a handy tool. Let me take a step back really quick, though, because I want to point out that one of the things that ASMI can do that we haven't done, but certainly if you don't want to attach lesson plans or things like that, you can set up your training so that you house all of your lesson plans. If you have standard training that you do every year, has harassment training and PREA training for those people who have jails, etc., you can house all of that training on your server somewhere and set your training documentation up so that it has a web address that goes right to that training. And then you don't even have to do the attachments. You can just, the URL is built right into your training, and it makes the documentation even that much faster. We haven't taken that step, but it's that's another option that you have if you're using ASMI. So back to the documentation of firearms training or assessments. One of the things that our instructors have come to very much love is the ability of ASMI to kick out training rosters and other things that are that they can use to ensure people are showing up and who's going to be there and who needs to be on the list. If you have a big department with a lot of people, you can't keep track of everybody, so you need to have those rosters. Instead of looking at schedules and writing them down or putting them in spreadsheets, ASMI will do all of that for you. So documenting firearms training or firearms qualifications is probably a good example of that. So if, for example, our firearms instructors are going to train everybody in the corrections facility on firearms training, I would select everybody who is going to go to that training, select an assessment, which I already have built into ASMI, and we're going to say that it's a rifle qualification. At this point, you can see down below that I have all of these boxes with people's names and pass, fail, hours of training, and a bunch of other blocks. This was all information that our firearms instructors gathered every year that they put on paper and they put into a file. We built it into ASMI under the assessments. These blocks are completely configurable by you. Whatever you want to put in there, you can. It's completely configurable by you, and you decide whether or not it's a required field or it's not a required field. But this is what our firearms instructor wanted to have. So once I select all of the folks that are going to go to training, I can export that training file into an Excel spreadsheet. And you'll see now that I have an Excel spreadsheet with all of the people that I had selected and all of the blocks that need to be filled out for the assessments. Once I provide this to the instructor, I can just email it to them out on the range. As they're going through their training, they take this information and they put it all into the spreadsheet, and they email me the spreadsheet back. We already have our firearms qualifications, standards, and lesson plans and everything already created, so the firearms instructors don't have to do that. They just simply provide me with this spreadsheet back. So when I go to provide, or when I go to document a training event, they send me the spreadsheet back. I go to the page that I need to document training here. I import a sheet, and not only will it bring in all of those people that they provided the documentation for, but it also has all the information that you want for your training records built in to that system. So I can look through the training and see that everything's filled out. There's one missing a serial number, so you can get that information and fill it in. And at that point, all you have to do is hit save, and now your training for firearms has been documented for everybody. We go a little bit farther. We like to add the actual rifle qual standards to that, and maybe a documentation of training. So I just go in and find our rifle qual standards and attach those rifle qual standards to everybody. So now you know everybody in the department who went to that training. So you'll remember earlier we talked about being able to see your training record and how fast it is in the system. So I should be able to go back to one of these individuals right now, and I'll select the first one on the list to go into their training record and look at their training events and, oh, I'm sorry, this was an assessment. Go into their assessments and see that it was documented. And there's the patrol rifle qualification performed and passed, and there's a couple other ones in there. So that's how we do it. And like I said, it's configurable for how you want to do the training and what information you want to have in there. It's just completely up to your department how you want to do it. That's how our department does it, but it's important to conceptualize at the beginning of the process how you want things to look so that you can kind of adapt your process to how ASMI works and fully maximize the tools in ASMI so that you can go through this process really quickly.
Great, Travis. I had a question before that was, how do you represent whether an officer took the training or not? And in your current workflow, how do you define determining whether someone was actually there for training or not?
Yeah, so that's a good question. What we do, and certainly ASMI will do it in several different ways. We're not such a huge department that I have to keep track of it so much in the system. As my instructors, I send them the roster, everybody who's supposed to attend. They do their primary training and then makeup training, and they just keep doing it until everybody has done the training, and then they provide me the documentation back. However, I'm sorry, sometimes we have training that we want to keep track of. You can generate a report that will send you the information, everybody who's attended the training, or like you saw in my reports earlier, I have reports set up that will send me a report saying who has not attended training. So I can set that up in several different ways, whether I want to know who has, who hasn't, whether I do that with reports or how I choose to do that. It just kind of depends on how it works for you.
Okay, I have another question for you. What was the process for building your system when you stood the system up?
That's a great question. So I worked with the folks up there up at Paladin. They do a very good job of helping you in every way that they can. If you have a spreadsheet with all of your personnel and what their positions are, they bring that into the system for you. Fortunately for law enforcement agencies, a lot of the law enforcement training is going to be in the system now, because as agencies use it, they have the ability to just pull in those training events, and then you can modify them the way that you want to. The thing that's going to take you a little bit of time is conceptualizing or deciding who needs to see what in the system and how often. So we determined in our department that for a lot of the training, nobody else needed to see the documentation. The person would go to the training, they would turn it in to the person who documents the training, it goes into ASMI. There needs to be no other approval in that system. Sorry, I'm having some throat issues here.
All right, well, why don't I throw a question at you then? You can think about it. And one question here was, what system are you pulling data for your reports from, and does it pull from Spillman, is the question here.
No, Spillman is not at all linked to this. We use Spillman for our primary RMS for the folks doing reports and evidence and all of that. This is specifically for training. We've put training into Spillman in years past, and it's bugger, doesn't work very well, is not very configurable, and I'm certain Spillman could add a block in there if we wanted them to for the small fee of 30 grand or something along those lines. It just has not worked out for us to document things in training. ASMI is eminently configurable. We can add things, take things out. If I can't figure it out, I can call up one of the good folks up there, and they'll probably figure it out in no time flat. So certainly that's where that's our issue with Spillman. So to speak more directly to the question, it pulls the training data from the offsite. It stores it in the cloud and keeps that data in the ASMI system. So it's pulling from different fields within ASMI. That would probably bring up a good point about what to do with training from before the time that you adopt ASMI. Our department decided that it was not worth the man hours to go back, find every piece of hard copy, turn it into a digital copy, create training records, and go back and rehabilitate that for people who've been around for 30 plus years. We just decided that that was not the best option. What we decided to do is take everybody's training records that we had, turn them into one big digital file so that they could be scrolled through, and then attach that into ASMI. So you'll see here in my training record that right here I have my historical training record. This is hundreds and hundreds of pages of training records for me going back 20 years that we just digitized and attached to ASMI. Going forward, we had a date on which we decided that we were going to start documenting all training into ASMI, and we completely converted over to how we were going to document it in the system. And so those historical training records are there for just that. historical information if we have some lawsuit that we need to get records that go way back. But what we're finding is as we get farther and farther away from the date that we adopted ASMI and we started documenting all training in there, the more robust that our training documentation has become. So the more and more information that we put in there, the more comprehensive the picture of the organization becomes, the more comprehensive our understanding of what training people have had, who needs to get what assessments, the better we can set up training cycles for people and have ASMI inform us on what training needs to be done at what quarter and all of those things. So that hopefully answers your question in a long way. The data comes from ASMI. It comes from the information that we put in there. So the better the information goes in, the better it's going to come out.
Great. That's perfect. And just to add a little bit to that, our system is capable of connecting with other third-party systems that have an API, an application interface, in order to share, receive, or give data to or from ASMI. So that is definitely capable as long as there is an API. Travis, let me throw one more question at you. It's a little longer, but I think you'll be able to understand. It said, my department is also a training academy for the region, so we have officers from outside. We report training to the state. Is there a way to maintain the training files, which include lesson plan, instructor bio, evaluations, roster, etc., or is this system for internal officers only?
That's a good question, and I would probably direct you to some of the good folks up there at Paladin to determine how you wanted to do that. I think just conceptualizing it the way I understand it, for instructor bios and other things, probably I would warehouse that information somewhere and connect to it through a URL or something along those lines. But that sounds like a bigger question for Paladin than probably I want to tackle.
Yeah, it is as well, too. The system is completely configurable to be able to match your organization. So there would be a better understanding of what the process is that scenario would take, and the system would be able to support that depending on how it goes. Another quick question was on here. What's the initial cost and what are the ongoing costs? And Travis, would you agree that the cost of ASMI is about the cup of coffee per month per officer? And from your perspective, how affordable is that compared to other systems you've seen?
Yes, so the cup of coffee per officer per month, yeah, I would say that's about right. But boy, you know, the thing I would point out is, yes, there is a cost to having the system, and yes, you know, it's ongoing. But I will tell you that the amount of time and effort that we now save in man hours and documentation of training and the time that I can spend doing other things, I can take a mountain of training from a month if I want to, and by the time I drink a cup of coffee, I have already documented all that training and moved on to something else in my day, whereas before it would take me much longer to even track down one item of training. If I have a report that I need to run, it's literally going to take me about 4 clicks of the mouse and about 30 seconds to get that information for anybody in the department who needs it. Whereas before, I could have been contacting instructors and moving around the department and trying to find all those pieces of information and pull all that together, and it was man hours intensive. So I would say that the amount that you save on that side of it is hard to quantify, but for us it has been a huge deal, and it gets to be a huger deal as time goes on and we have more and more information in the system and it becomes more robust. So What that's going to look like for you and your department just kind of depends on what your state of training documentation is and how much effort that you're having to put into those kind of things at this time.
That's great. We've got a couple follow-ups on that. Is it Starbucks coffee or McDonald's coffee? And so just to kind of address that, it's no more than $4 per month per officer as software as a service. And that ties in to the next question. It says, you mentioned the cloud. Is the data stored locally or in the Paladin cloud? It's actually not the Paladin cloud, it's the Amazon cloud, AWS, and it's the same scenario and setup that's used by the Department of Defense.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's my understanding.
Okay. Yeah, and they were asking, there's another follow-up here is what's the startup cost in dollars and ongoing cost in dollars? And maybe I can address that to start, but we have the software as a service model where you pay per tracked officer, and that is what is the recurring cost every year. And the power of that is your cost does not change as we listen to our customers and add new functionality. Our clients simply receive that functionality as they go forward. And we're working on capability right now for daily field observation reports, and that's a great capability, and our current customers are just going to be able to receive that in follow-up.
Yeah, and I would just kind of jump onto that bandwagon there and say that I've been working a lot with ASMI over this last year, not just on building the program for our department, but we've been working on a whole bunch of other projects to make the program do more things for your organization as it goes forward. Everything from, like Terry just mentioned, building the FTO daily observation reports into the program. I just went up and kind of looked at the initial beta version that they're working on right now and talked about some of the features that we could have so that the FTO can log on to Paladin. They can fill out a DOR just like they recognize it now. They can route it right to their greenhorn. They can sign off on it, route it right to the FTO program manager, and it documents it right into ASMI. There's no more paper running around. There's no more going back to try and figure out what was going on in the DORs by tracking down the book. One of the things that we were talking about was making a report for the DORs, which will give you a snapshot view of how that recruit is doing quantitatively over the course of the FTO program. Are they meeting that 4 minimum standard? Are they below a standard in a certain area? And if they are, being able to click right on that certain area and dive down and see what the specific issues are that they're having, rather than having to go back and read every DOR and flip through them and just kind of getting a overall general guess of what's going on, I guess is a good way to put it. We're looking at building in a way to track department accreditation standards so that you can do your accreditation tracking within the system. Department shift schedules and do shift scheduling within ASMI. They already have some of that built now, and we're kind of looking at how to make that work for law enforcement so that it's another tool. So every day, Paladin's working really hard to ensure that they're looking at different ways they can make this a more comprehensive tool beyond just that training tracking. And so they're moving in really positive directions in that way. And once you sign on, all of those features and services just get added to your program as the program gets modified and made better.
Okay, great. Well, I just want to be mindful of our time. We've got about 8 more minutes remaining, and I just want to let everybody know we are caught up on questions. So if you would like to submit a question, please feel free to do so. I would like to address the ongoing cost and the initial costs. Obviously, forces range in size from 30, 20 officers up to thousands. So the initial setup costs for an implementation could be anywhere between $5,000 to $100,000, depending on the level of effort to build that organization. That said, I would like to mention that Paladin is currently offering through the end of March a zero onboarding cost capability, where simply for the cost of the software as a service per officer price, we will help you with remote installation and remote training to stand up the system for you. So that can really mean a savings from averaging about $15,000 on up, depending on the size of the organization and the level of effort to build that up. Great, Travis, any other questions or any other points you'd like to be able to make as we're beginning to think about wrapping up?
Yeah, just for a second, I'd jump back to the discussion I was having earlier about conceptualizing how you're going to work with Paladin and set the system up. One of the things that I was talking about earlier is they do a really good job of helping you incorporate personnel into the department, and you'll be able to import a lot of those training items that are already set up. The challenge on your side will be looking at who has individual authorities and who really needs to see information. And that's important because we determined in our department that a lot of the training only had to go to the training person who does the training documentation, but there's some training like high liability, SWAT, firearms, qualifications, those things that really needed to have a routing. And so we wanted to make sure that our training supervisors, the patrol operations lieutenant, and the chief all had the opportunity to review that. Another thing that you want to review probably is who gets assigned to what positions. And so some of the time that you'll be spending that will be the work for you is working with your staff to determine how you want to set up that routing in your department. Because when you get training, in my dashboard, for example, you'll see that I have alerts, and that's telling me that some people went to TASER training. Well, I have to approve that because we determined that that was a high liability area. We wanted to know who was getting that training and that it goes through a certain routing. So when I sign off on these, it'll be routed off to the chief. Or if we have sign-offs for people being assigned to something, somebody being assigned as the SWAT team leader is a collateral duty or some of those things. So a lot of your time will not be spent so much at determining that, or determining how to bring people into the program and how to set it up. The Paladin folks are exceptionally good at kind of building that structure for you. It'll be up to your department and how you want to set it up to determine where things get routed, how they get routed, who signs off on them, who has access to them once they've been documented and those things. So that's kind of the process that we went through, and something that you would have to think about too as you move forward. So I just want to kind of go back and touch on that real quick.
Thanks, Travis. It's very good. As we're beginning to wind up, I just had a couple of clarifications. They were asking of when is the zero onboarding cost expire. You would need to sign your agreement with us for software as a service by the end of March. So 31 March, or the end of this quarter, is where we're offering the zero onboarding cost options. And then a clarification too is they just wanted us to repeat the price. So again, the software as a service cost is $4 per month per tracked officer or per tracked individual. Now what that means is a tracked individual is someone where you are actively tracking their training records. That said, departments may have a number of people who are retired or no longer work you can continually include that information in your implementation, but if it is designated as an inactive record, you are not paying that per tract officer. And that's important to really help an organization to look historically, but then to take that information and hopefully use that information to project looking forward what your needs may need. So I hope that clarifies those questions as well. Travis, was there any last thing that you wanted to comment on?
No, the one thing I would say is I think they posted my email address. Feel free to email me if you have any further questions. I'll give you a no BS answer. I'll give you a call and we'll talk about it. I would just reemphasize by saying this program, ASMI, has met our needs way more than I anticipated that it would, and I see us moving in lots of good directions with other things that we want to track and look at for the future. So if you're seeing things here that you think may meet your needs, but you're not 100% sure and you want to talk to somebody about how that may look, I'd be happy to talk to you because I've spent a ton of time with it. So be happy to do that for you.
Well, Travis, you certainly are a power user, if I must say so myself. But Travis, I want to thank you very much for your time today and for providing our audience kind of a look inside what you built there at Mason County using the ASMI platform. I'd like to also extend my thanks to everybody out there who tuned in today. If you would like to learn how ASMI can help your agency save time and money, feel free to reach me. Our contact information's there. You can sign up for your own personalized demonstration via our website, or you can reach out to me. But other than that, I want to wish everybody a great day, and if you have questions, please don't hesitate to give me a follow-up. So once again, Travis, thank you very much for your time today, and thanks to everyone.
Yep, no problem.